Hi, I'm Aidan from the Gwinnett County Public Library. Today we're going to paint rocks inspired by the night sky and the constellations that we can see there. For this project, you will want to find some river rocks. I suggest looking for larger, smoother, flatter rocks so that you will have an easier surface to paint on. Be sure though to wash them thoroughly. You will also want several varieties of acrylic paint. White, black, and different varieties of blue paint. Paintbrushes, make sure to get some little ones for the finer details. Something to mix your colours with. A palette can be helpful, but I prefer to use a paper plate for this project. And a sealant, like Mod Podge. I find that a glossy finish works best here. Finally, you want to get these small, inexpensive wedge sponges that you use to apply makeup. Once you've gathered your supplies, it's time to get started. We begin by priming our rock. We're going to apply a solid layer of white paint. This will smooth the surface and provide an even colouring underneath. Now this is a pretty simple painting job. Just make sure that you paint evenly with your brush strokes all going in the same direction. Once you've done that, it's time to put them off to one side to dry. When that layer's done, we want to paint the entire rock again. We're going to make this next layer black. Once again, be careful, paint evenly, and then set it off to the side to dry. Now we're going to create our first gradient. A gradient is a gradual blending of two or more colors, as you can see in this example. At either end of the gradient, we have solid colors, but between them, these colors are mixed to create a smooth transition between them. In this case, I'm going to be going from black to an ultramarine blue. We're going to use our paper plates as our palette and place dabs of each color on either side. Then in the middle, we're going to take a little bit of each and mix it together, like this. Now we take one of our wedge sponges and along one edge dip it into the blue. We want to get it down just one side. Then we're going to take the opposite side of the sponge and dip it in the black. This will leave a gap down the middle. So we're going to take our paintbrush and add the blended paint in there. At this point, each layer is looking distinct and separate, so we need to blend them. To do this, we're going to put our rock off to one side and start to very gently dab the sponge against the plate. You will probably find that the darker color begins to spread into the middle, so apply a little bit more of the blended color and gently stamp it again. Gently wiggle it back and forward to encourage those colors to blend. You don't want to lose the pure color at either edge though. If that happens, you may need to dip those edges again. Now find the middle of your rock and gently dab in a straight line so that the black of the sponge points towards the top of the rock and the blue the bottom. Work backwards and forwards until you're happy with the results. Now get a fresh sponge or use the clean side and dip it into the blue. You're going to dab off any excess onto the plate and then find that pure blue edge that you had from before and work downwards to cover the bottom half of the rock. It should look something like this. When it's dry, we're going to create a second gradient. We're going to use the ultramarine blue again. And I'm going to put 2 blobs of that onto a fresh paper plate. I'm going to add a very small amount of purple into the middle here, which is going to give it a sort of hazy effect. Finally, I'm going to do another dab of ultramarine blue, and I'm going to add a little white to it. If you had another lighter blue though, you could easily use that here. We're going to repeat the sponge process, putting the darker and lighter blues on either edge with the purpley blue in the middle. We dab the sponge on the plate until we have a drier sponge with those carefully blended colors. And then start to dab your sponge across the surface, like I'm doing here. When that's done, get a fresh bit of sponge and do the same thing with the very light blue, going all the way to the bottom of the rock. Now, if you make a mistake like I did here and get a smudge of color in the wrong place, just take a fresh bit of sponge, find the matching shade, and then go over your mistake. Once it's dry, I'm going to add some details to the sky. I want to create a silhouette of the land and some trees at the base, and I also want to put in some stars. I'm using a black paint pen to draw the outline of a hilltop, and I'm going to fill it in using a little black paint. Now I'm going to draw some trees using the black paint pen again, though you could just use a paintbrush. To do this, I'm going to do a straight line upwards and then zigzag from side to side, making the branches longer as I go downwards. I make my trees different sizes to make it look a little more natural and varied. Now, I want to include a constellation. A constellation is a grouping of visible stars that, taken together, form a recognizable pattern. It's thought that constellations were first recognized thousands of years ago, when they were referenced in stories relating to a culture's beliefs or mythology. Over time, constellations changed in size and shape, while different cultures adopted their own constellations and names for them. In the early 20th century, though, the International Astronomical Union standardized the names and shapes of these constellations, creating a list of 88 covering the entire night sky. For my example, I'm using a constellation associated with my zodiac sign, Pisces. That constellation looks like this, and it's supposed to represent the two fish that Aphrodite and her son turned into to escape from a monster in Greek mythology. For this next bit, you're going to need your finest tipped brush. Get a tiny amount of bright white paint, and then follow the star pattern to recreate it with the lightest of touches. It can be really helpful to either pencil your design in first, or to have reference material to compare your work to. In my case, I had a laptop set up nearby that I could look at while I was painting. Once this is done, we need to leave it to dry again. Now, finally, we need to add some sealant to protect your paintwork from chipping or weathering. I'm using a gloss finish Mod Podge to make it extra shiny. We apply this just like paint in an even layer. While it goes on looking like school glue, it actually dries clear. Make sure that all of your brushstrokes go in the same direction to make your work look neat and tidy. Once that's done, we're going to have a little bit of a wait for it to dry. It takes at least an hour for it to feel dry to the touch, but before you do any heavy handling with it, I would give it at least 72 hours. So, what are you going to do with your painted rock? Well, you may want to hide it around your garden, or use it as a decoration on your desk, or why not add a strong button magnet onto the back with some hot glue, and use it as a fridge magnet. You can use that same gradient technique I showed you here with different colours, and use it to create completely different designs. Reds and yellows make a gorgeous sunset, for example. Thank you for joining me for today's session. I hope it inspired you to get creative and to paint your very own scene. Finally, be sure to check out our spring reading program, which starts very soon. Sign up for free and earn points to enter in a prize draw, where you can win a ready for summer gift basket. Registration opens March 1st.